Bryce Young and Woody Marks are sneaky good plays this week. We get into the best sleepers and DFS plays for week 5 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, today, like every Friday, we get into our sleepers of the week. At each position, we will give you 2 guys, and then we'll get into our favorite PrizePicks picks of the week, as well as our FanDuel lineup at the end of today's show. So let's hop right into it with sleepers of the week. At the quarterback position, who is your favorite sleeper this week, Vinny?
Yeah, he had a couple touchdowns combined last week, but I think he has a better game this week, and he's going to be on the radar for fantasy going forward. It is Giants rookie Jaxson Dart in the matchup at New Orleans, so it's a really good matchup. Dart played at Ole Miss, so it's kind of close to where he was in college. He was feeling it last week. They let him loose as a runner. They really enjoyed what he did against the Chargers. Very tough defense, putting up a couple scores in that game, despite not a lot of offense for the team overall. I think they'll have more success moving the ball. I know Malik Neighbors is not in the lineup, but there's enough weapons there. Cam Scatterbo as well out of the backfield. His touchdown last week was to Theo Johnston, the tight end. So there's some people that can help him score points and put up the numbers. But the biggest thing is he's got that running floor. They're going to let him run as much as he can. They've designed runs for him. They want him to use that part of his game big time. So I think he has a very nice game overall. Maybe he'll get to the 3 touchdowns, but I could see 2 with like 60 yards rushing, and then you're already in business almost there with his fantasy scoring for the week. There's some people on bye, so if you need someone with Caleb Williams off, you had maybe Jordan Love in your lineup, or maybe you're streaming with Aaron Rodgers or Michael Penix Jr., he's an option that you can go with this week.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. And I actually have one of his weapons as my sleeper of the week at a different position here. But going with quarterback, my guy, I'm going to go with Bryce Young against the Dolphins. So it's actually at home. Listen, during our quarterback episode, you had Bryce Young ranked higher than I did. And I was saying, I'm nervous, even though it's a good matchup. But the closer we get to the weekend, the more I'm buying into Bryce Young having a good fantasy week. We have already had one good fantasy week from him this year. It's been not a good year for Bryce Young at all, but we've seen one good performance at least with 21.3 fantasy points in week 2. Last year at the end of the year, he was able to string together some good fantasy performances. So it's not like we've never seen him do it. And the Dolphins have allowed a league high 26.5 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. Daniel Jones, Drake May, and Justin Fields all scored 26 or more fantasy points against them. I think Bryce Young at home against this defense, he can hopefully put it together. And if he can't, he might lose his job. So really, he could be playing for his job this week.
Yeah, I think that's a very good choice there at quarterback. I've liked Bryce Young. He's a guy that I only want to play at home. He has good matchups, by the way, next week and this week, because he's got the Cowboys coming there to Carolina. So a couple of matchups where you could play Bryce Young if you're having bye week issues, need to stream, play that game for a multi-week streamer. That's the guy to look at. Now, my running back, it's happened late, and it's a guy that I want to play in a lot of leagues right now if I can pick him up and plug him in. Bucky Irving looks like he's going to miss a couple of games, at least with a foot injury. That means he'll miss probably the game against the Seahawks this week, and the 49ers are on the schedule next week. So Rachaad White comes into play because it's actually the perfect matchup for Rachaad White because the Seahawks, they're very good at stopping the run, but they're not very good at covering backs out of the backfield. Rachaad White was drafted for that specific purpose in the Tom Brady era. Now he's taking a back seat because he's not nearly as explosive as a runner as Irving. So that will hurt them a little bit, but they need to still use the backfield here. White is their experienced guy. They'll get him some key touches here. He's not mainly going to be running for a lot. The Seahawks defense can be tough, but they've given up just monstrous game. Going back all the way to Kyle Juszczyk in week 1, like even pedestrian running backs are doing big-time things against them. We've seen it also with Jalen Warren, Christian McCaffrey. You can throw on the Bucks, or on Seattle, I should say, with the Bucks, with their running backs. So I love Rachaad White this week. I think he could have a big receiving game, catch like 7 balls in this game.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I'm going to go with Woody Marks, the rookie for the Texans against the Ravens. Without Lamar Jackson, they should be able to keep this game at least a close game, right? The Texans should be able to keep these running backs involved in their game plan. And Marks outsnapped Nick Chubb for the first time last week, and his snap percentage has gone up each week of his career. It started at 11% in week 1. Now it's all the way up to 57% in week 4. And he did the thing last week when they actually gave him a chance, right? Gave him 21 touches. He put up 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. While Chubb still got touches, 15 touches, but only 62 yards. I think this team is going to keep leaning away from Chubb because he's just struggling. He's averaging 4.2 yards per touch this year, while Marks is averaging 6.4. And then Marks just gets an amazing matchup against the Ravens. No team has allowed more fantasy points to the running back position than the Ravens this season. So Woody Marks, get him in your lineup.
That's a good call. I think Woody Marks is now maybe almost every week starter. Don't worry too much about the return or imminent return of Joe Mixon. By the way, the Texans are off next week, so maybe they might have Mixon back after. I don't know if it matters all that much, but something to monitor there if you've invested in Marks, or if he has another big game, maybe you want to try to move him or something while you can, and he has a big value, the biggest value that he might have. So let's hope he goes off against the Ravens either way to help your team or become trade bait. Now, my wide receiver, if you look at the Patriots, they struggle a little bit with bigger outside receivers. And I do actually like Khalil Shakir too, but Keon Coleman on Monday night, I think it's the type of game built for him. They can stretch the field, throw it. We saw DK Metcalf have some success against his defense. Taylor McMillan was a tough cover as well, even though they blew out the Panthers. So when I look at it, I mean, Coleman is the closest thing the Bills have to that type of receiver. I think it also could be a high-scoring game where a lot of the Bills' assets will score, including Dalton Kincaid, James Cook. Shakir had the touchdown last week, so I think it might be the turn of Keon Coleman. He had a big game early in the year. I think it's time to go back to him for the Bills. And again, they need to get him going because, again, the more dangerous this offense can be with multiple weapons making big plays, they're going to be harder and harder to stop as we go forward. The Bills are going to have to put up a lot of points on the Patriots on Monday.
I like it. I'm going to go with Darius Slayton for my sleeper at wide receiver. That goes with your Jaxson Dart pick. And like we said, it stinks Jaxson Dart won't have Malik Neighbors, but he looked impressive in his first start. And let's hope he can throw, have more opportunities in the passing game this week. He only threw for 111 passing yards last week, but Darius Slayton did lead the team with 44 receiving yards. Obviously, we're going to need a lot more than that to be happy from Slayton, but that made up 40% of Dart's passing yards in the game. The Saints have allowed 13.7 yards per reception and already 5 touchdowns to wide receivers this season, both ranking 7th most in the NFL to wide receivers. So I do think Slayton steps up and becomes the top target in this offense with Malik Neighbors out. And we've seen Slayton have good games in the past. Like, he's not a bad wide receiver at all. So I think he's a good sleeper this week if you're in a desperate need for a flex play this week.
Yeah, and he could help Dart put up those numbers. We could also look for Wan'Dale Robinson getting a little bit more involved. So I know everyone flocked to Robinson. That was also familiar on Thursday night with the 49ers. Everyone went for Demarcus Robinson, and Kendrick Bourne is the one that goes off. So Darius Slayton might be the forgotten person, right, in relation to Robinson, because he's a big play guy. I think Jaxson Dart will also be more aggressive in throwing the ball downfield to Slayton, as we saw young Daniel Jones do it, if you remember that with Slayton. Now, I'm going deeper at tight end. Look, tight end actually might be position you're hurting at this particular week. I don't know. it's been bad, right? So Dalton Schultz hasn't been exciting, but he's consistently getting targets, like 6 targets a game, and he somehow ends up always catching 5 of those. So if you're in PPR, that's 5 points you'll take anytime, right, from your tight end if you can get 5 grabs. But on top of that, the Ravens have really struggled against the tight end. They've given up some combo games to different tight end groups here. So it's not just one. They tend to struggle against multiple tight ends on teams. So that's helpful, right? Because you really don't have too much competition for Dalton Schultz on this team. So he will get the targets there from CJ Stroud. And again, the correlation, if you're going to struggle against the run, you often struggle against tight ends. So Michelle had Woody Marks. I'm going this way with Dalton Schultz. So those things still linger. If you're going a little bit deeper, you could also look at Cade Otton because the Seahawks also can't cover tight ends as well as running backs. So those are 2 guys you can just put in if you're playing the streaming game at tight end.
Yeah, and this guy was on waivers for sure. Now he might not be now after they went through on Wednesday morning. But Darren Waller, I'm believing in him for 2 reasons this week. It's the matchup. The Panthers have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to tight end since the start of last year. And then also it's just the need for him in this offense. I mean, instantly, he hadn't played in almost 2 years, right? And he instantly gets 2 touchdowns in that game, though. It was only 3 receptions. He only played on 27% of the snaps. But with Tyreek Hill out, with there being no other tight end, like they've been needing a tight end, I think his snaps start to increase as he gets more in shape, in that football shape. And then his targets will also increase as well. And clearly he's going to be their end zone guy when they've struggled in that area around the goal line for a while now. So to have Darren Waller there, it seems like could be huge. So I am willing to plug him in this week and give him a shot. We are going to transition to our picks of the week. So if you enjoy playing some DFS, you can get in on the action with us. Or if not, these are just guys we also like for fantasy this week. So it's useful information. We'll get to that right after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on the game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or, the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. There's a sports bar right in my neighborhood that comes alive every night. When the Houston Astros play or on Sundays with the Texans playing, the energy is incredible and it feels like the entire town is there cheering on their city. Spending money there doesn't just support the business, it supports the people behind it and the community around it. Those local spots are what make the neighborhood feel like home, and so many of them run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward, really take your pick. How about that 49ers defense forcing a fumble of Kyren Williams with the game on the line at the end of the 4th quarter? And then stopping Kyren Williams on 4th down in overtime to win the game. Those were the 2 game-winning plays by that defense. What a performance as well from Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne, the super subs of the 49ers, getting it done. That's the moment that defines the game. How do they keep themselves moving forward, going forward no matter what, or even just saying, hey, we got this, next man up. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Michelle, it is time to reveal our prize picks of the week. I didn't have to wait too long. Well, I did for TJ Hawkinson last week, but other than that, I felt really good. The picks came through. Your picks have been on fire as well. So let's keep it going for everyone out there. Get into prize picks. It's exciting. You just have to pick 3 or more players there with their projections, and you can put together a winning lineup for you. And here on Locked On Fantasy Football, we go more because we want points. So, Michelle, who's your first more that you're going to play on prize picks this week?
Yeah, I'm going Quentin Johnston more than 64.5 receiving yards. He has over 70 in all 4 games this year. Puka Nakua, Quentin Johnston, and Jackson Smith-Njigba are the only players who had at least 70 receiving yards in each of the first 4 weeks. And I know we're all just waiting for the shoe to drop for Quentin Johnston, but I just don't think it happens in this matchup against the Commanders. They've allowed the 10th most receiving yards to wide receivers this year. In the last 2 weeks, Trey Tucker put up 145 yards against them. Drake London had 110 receiving yards against them last week. I just think it keeps going. He's leading the Chargers in targets, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns this year. So again, that's Quentin Johnston more than 64.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, go figure. I mean, Lad McConkey managers are really sad to see this is happening. Maybe you had Quentin Johnson too, but Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnson have been a bad 1-2 gut punch so far for McConkey's value, but QJ can keep it up here against the Commanders. Now, I'm going to that game that I talked about with Rachaad White. He's just a guy that is lining up perfectly again for the matchup as a super sub, and his number on PrizePicks is very nice here. 23.5 receiving yards against the Seahawks. The Seahawks just hemorrhage receiving points, if you want to call it that. They just do not know how to cover backs. They've had trouble with their linebacker core for a while. They're really good against straight up stopping the run. They're really good in other areas of their pass defense, but some weakness under Mike McDonald there so far with their personnel. So 23.5. This is a very low number. Again, we've seen Kyle Juszczyk do well as a fullback receiving passes against this defense. So it's just a thing that teams are going to game plan for to try to move the ball in the Seahawks. And without Bucky Irving, Rachaad White should see the key touches in this game.
I like it. I'm going to go with Quinshon Judkins, more than 76.5 rushing yards. I mean, he's just been balling out. It's like it didn't even matter. He had to miss the whole offseason and the preseason and didn't sign his contract until after week 1. It just hasn't mattered. The Browns have instantly fed them the ball. His carries have gone up each week, with 21 carries last week. And over the last 2 games, I mean, he's had 94 rushing yards and 82, so easily eclipses 76.5. And the other Cleveland running backs have combined for 3 carries for -1 yards over the last 2 games. This has been all Judkins and doesn't really seem to matter. I mean, he got 21 carries and they lost 34-10 against the Lions. Like, he's going to get utilized. This Vikings defense can be run on. Kenneth Gainwell just had a great game against them last week with 99 rushing yards. Bijan Robinson in week 2 had 143, with Tyler Algier also putting up 76 against them. So I don't mind the matchup, and I think Judkins gets at least 18 carries in this game, which should be enough to get over that 76.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, they should keep leaning on him. Dylan Gabriel making his first start. That's an early start there, so make sure you take care of business with Judkins in your lineup there for the London game against the Vikings. But definitely a guy that they need to lean on more with, again, a fellow rookie now starting a quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. We'll see if Michelle has another Q player. I don't think she's going to pick Quinn Ewers for her third PrizePicks, but she might. I'm going to go with a fan favorite, also Locked On Fantasy Football favorite, Sam Laporta, 37.5 receiving yards, more than at the Bengals. It's time to get this guy going, and what better time than another team that struggles badly against a tight end that spilled over from last season when they were atrocious. So the Bengals have, again, been one-two punched by a lot of teams so far, including the combination of Harold Fannin Jr. and David Njoku. Last week, it was the just stellar combination of Evan Ingram and Adam Troutman doing the damage for Denver. So this is a great spot for Sam Laporta. Look, the touchdowns are hard, right? Because they're going to involve somebody else to randomly catch a touchdown. But in terms of usage, the yardage, it's too low here for me. 37.5. I think he clears 45-50 easily in this game. So I'm going Sam Laporta more than, again, 37.5 receiving yards, a very modest total at Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, he really has to, right? He has to step up here for our fantasy value to, to trust starting him moving forward, because this is too good of a matchup. So yes, I agree with you. Now, my last one is Breece Hall, more than 68.5 rushing yards against the Cowboys. Cowboys defense stinks. We already know that. And now that Braylon Allen is sidelined, then Breece Hall can finally get utilized as the workhorse that we've been waiting for, right? And in both games that he had more than 10 carries this season. He had 107 rushing yards in week 1 and then 81 in week 4 with just 14 carries. He's been efficient when getting the workload, and I don't see why he wouldn't be efficient again this week. So I really love Justin Fields this week in fantasy, but I also really, really like Breece Hall. So I definitely expect him to hit more than 68.5 rushing yards.
All right, my choice here, of course, it's got to be a quarterback, and it's got to be rushing yards. I was surprised at how low this number was because it's actually a pretty good athlete against a team that's given up some good rushing yards. 2 quarterbacks. The Kansas City Chiefs are that team, and Trevor Lawrence plays them in prime time here on Monday night. So looking forward to that. I had a little bit wrong. The Patriots and Bills are on Sunday night. This game is on Monday night, Jaguars and Chiefs. So Trevor Lawrence, again, 10.5 rushing yards against the Chiefs. I do like it. He's going to have to will his team to win. It's going to be exciting. It's one of the biggest primetime games in Jacksonville in quite some time, with a lot on the line here against the reigning AFC champions. So I think Lawrence is going to get into a little bit of a gritty mode, try to make some plays happen in this one. He needs to. This is a huge game for the Jaguars. Like, you would establish them in a whole different light if they're able to win this back-to-back against the 49ers and Chiefs. Are you kidding me? That would be something to look at with the Jaguars. But 10.5 rushing yards, I think he'll get that win or lose against the Chiefs.
Love it. All right, we're going to transition into our FanDuel lineup and to finish up today's episode and to finish up the prep for week 5 fantasy football. We'll get to that right after a quick break.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
All right, let's get into our FanDuel lineups of the week. And we do not know each other's lineups, right? So this is always a fun little game to say who we have that's familiar or the same, right? And then that means we really, really like those players this week. Who do you have at quarterback, Vinny?
Yeah, I'm going with Dak Prescott. I thought about Justin Fields in the same game, but Dak was still a relative bargain despite his massive game last week in the tie against the Packers. That was a wild game for Prescott and Love. He stays hot. The Jets defense hasn't been all that. Sauce Gardner seems confused. They're not getting the calls. It's just been an absolute mess so far with Aaron Glenn as the coach here and trying to fix a lot of things. The Jets are very vulnerable in a lot of areas against wide receivers, against tight ends. It doesn't matter if CeeDee Lamb's in the lineup, as we saw last week. George Pickens and the other weapons can do plenty of damage. So I'm going with Dak Prescott there at 7,300. I like that price for him this week.
So I am going with Justin Fields, the guy across from Dak Prescott. It's a little bit more expensive, but I think he's safer. I think he has a higher ceiling as well with his legs. And I love the matchup for Fields, obviously, against this Cowboys defense. And then I went and got that stack with Garrett Wilson to go with him. I love Garrett Wilson this week. I have him ranked as a top 6 wide receiver. And then for my other 2 wide receivers, I'll just hit on those. It's Quentin Johnston, who I already talked about loving this week. It just hasn't stopped. I mean, he keeps scoring touchdowns and he looks really, really good out there. So I paid up for him at 7,500. And then Nico Collins, I paid even more, 8,100 as my other wide receiver in that matchup against the Ravens defense that's struggling a lot right now too. So that's, again, Garrett Wilson, Quentin Johnston, and Nico Collins as my wide receivers.
Yeah, I did also pay up for Garrett Wilson. He's my number 1 receiver this week at 7,800. I don't know why, but I got into Ohio State mood and just went with two other guys from Ohio State. Chris Olave, I like the price a lot. He's getting a lot of targets. The Giants have been giving a lot of points to wide receivers. Olave is the number one. He is the target, getting a lot. He did score last week against the Bills, so maybe he can build on that with Spencer Rattler, who I think can have a decent game this week at home to just at least keep the ball moving. So Chris Olave is my next one. And Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that second half against the Seahawks was big for him. Came through, kind of shook off some issues with confidence, but they're also getting the Titans, who've given up a lot of plays downfield in court, including to Nico Collins, that aforementioned player last week. So they are a bad pass defense. So I'm going Wilson, Olave, and Harrison as my wide receivers. All Buckeyes. Look, you can't go wrong with Buckeyes. You could play Emeka Buka. You could play Jackson Smith-Njigba. It doesn't matter. They could all come through for you this week.
I was going to say, you don't even know who you're going to pick here when you said OSU, because I was like, oh, okay, Emeka or JSN. I was like, not either of those guys. That's funny. My running backs are David Montgomery. I know he had a big dud last week, but I think he comes back in this matchup against the Bengals. The Lions should be able to handle business. And when they handle business on the ground, it's normally both Gibbs and Montgomery going off. And he was cheaper at 6,300. So went with him, and then went even cheaper than that with Woody Marks at 5,400. I've talked about why I like Woody Marks earlier in my sleeper segment. I think he's going to lead this backfield in touches again, and he has a great matchup. So going to go with Woody Marks at 5,400.
Yeah, I'm going to make it 3 for 3 in the Rachaad White recommendation. Again, this is also to remind everyone, hey, Bucky Irving's not playing. So if you have to go get somebody, also not playing Trey Benson, another guy that's ruled out. So I think people have jumped on Amari DeMarcado. Chuba Hubbard is also out. We mentioned Rico Dowdle. So just a reminder that Rachaad White is going to be getting the key touches here in Seattle. 5,200. He was just too cheap. And then I haven't done this season, so let's go to Saquon Barkley this year for the first time. But look, he has got a great matchup against the Broncos. It's that type of game. It's a Barkley game. It's been a couple weeks since he's gone off. The Broncos are their most vulnerable in run defense. It's hard to pass on them with their pass rush and Pat Surtain too. So they have to run. And the Eagles always recognize this, which I love. I know when they're going to run a lot, this is a game they're going to do it a lot with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. So I'm taking him, paying up for him all the way, almost to the top here at running back.
Yeah, I like that. Did you say your second running back?
Oh, Rachaad White was my second.
Rachaad White and Saquon Barkley. Okay, yes.
I do have a third running back if you want me to reveal him. He's
go ahead.
It's Jahmyr Gibbs. So I'm paid up for a couple of the big dudes this week. I think the Lions could just, I don't know how many points they could score on the Bengals this week. So Jake Browning, it doesn't matter who they start this week. They could have gotten whatever, Carson Palmer or Andy Dalton or somebody from their past to play. It doesn't matter. They're going to get ridiculously outscored by the Lions because they cannot do the things that the now Lions do well: throw to the tight end, run the ball, deep shots, you name it. They struggle against everything that the Lions are going to come in and do, and Gibbs is going to be part of that. So I would not be shocked if the Lions went into Cincinnati and scored 50 points. I'm just going to say it. This is kind of like a away home game for them. Like, I think Jared Goff has been much better of late on the road, and I think they're just going to go off, and Gibbs and Montgomery are going to be part of that.
Now, for my flex play, I'm going with another wide receiver. It's Teteroa McMillan. I was high on him last week. That did not come to fruition, but I think I was just a week too early, right? And if I think Bryce Young is going to be good in this matchup against the Dolphins, that means I think McMillan's going to be good as well, because he needs to be hitting him. It was like as soon as Bryce Young sat down, it was like, oh, Andy Dalton can find McMillan? Come on. So, yeah, I think Teteroa McMillan and Bryce Young get on the same page, and they can do it against this Dolphins defense. At tight end, I'm going back to that Dallas Jets game. I'm taking Jake Ferguson. His target share is just too safe, right? And he finally scored a touchdown last week. So if he can keep scoring touchdowns, that would be great. But you don't even really need that with Ferguson because he can get the yardage and the target. So I went with him at 6,000.
Yeah, I realized I didn't want to play Dak Prescott without some target. So I also want Jake Ferguson in this game. The Jets have really struggled against tight ends. He should be well involved. It should be a lot of the George Pickens, Jake Ferguson show, with a little bit of Jalen Tolbert and some of these other dudes sprinkled in. But Ferguson should see a lot of volume and another high-scoring game that you want a part of. Now, who do you have to close things out at defense, Michelle?
I'm going with the Cardinals because they weren't even close to the top for whatever reason, and they're playing the Titans. It's 4,400. So whoever's playing the Titans, you want them, right? The Titans have no offense whatsoever. The Cardinals defense is good enough to, show up and not allow the Titans to put up very many points. Hopefully they can get some turnovers. So that's who I went with.
Yeah, last week I tried to go bargain basement. It did not work with the Titans, but I am going back to that strategy because I wanted some of these other players. So, I mean, I went with the Panthers this week because the Panthers, just 2 weeks ago, they had a shutout at home. So who knows? I mean, the Dolphins are not like this smooth, pristine offense in front of Tua Tagovailoa. The Panthers do have some guys in the inside pass rush that could cause some problems for Tua. Tua is not as good on the road. We know that. And the Panthers as a team are much better at home. So I'm just going to take a shot at the Panthers. It allowed me to get Barkley and Gibbs in my lineup. And look, if those guys go off and I get a little from the Panthers and just modest totals, I'll be happy with that.
Perfect. To go through my lineup real quick, I got Justin Fields at quarterback, David Montgomery and Woody Marks at running back. My wide receivers are Quentin Johnston, Nico Collins, and Garrett Wilson, with Tedero McMillan in my flex. I got Jake Ferguson at tight end and the Cardinals for my defense.
Yeah, I also have Ferguson as my tight end and Wilson as my top wide receiver. And then Dak Prescott at quarterback, Rachaad White, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs also making it in the flex. Then Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison, and closing with the Carolina Panthers on defense.
That will be it for today's episode and our episodes for the week. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen of the day. And we will be back with you on Monday. We hope you all get your wins. If you want to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us, whether it's on audio form or on YouTube, that would be great. If you have any questions, you can hit us up on Twitter. We will talk to you Monday. Bye, y'all.